the title of this video: She was left to die. She returned leading their lost armada. Betrayed and left for dead beyond the rift, Commander Rose Varenn awakens a long-lost alien armada slumbering in the void. Bound by forgotten technology and ancient purpose, the fleet answers to her alone. Transformed by the power that tried to consume her, Rose returns to the galaxy that abandoned her, not to conquer, but to expose the truth and dismantle the corrupt union that orchestrated her fall. As worlds rise to follow and old powers crumble, she becomes the symbol of retribution and rebirth. She was left to die. She returned leading their lost armada, and with her, the reckoning has begun. The stars beyond the rift shimmered like scattered bones, cold, distant, silent. Commander Rose Varenn stood at the helm of the Eclipse Dancer, her violet eyes fixed on the anomaly writhing in space ahead. The rift wasn't just a storm of gravitational chaos and fractured time, it was a boundary. On one side, the charted galaxy, full of familiar betrayals. On the other, nothingness, or something worse. Rose didn't believe in nothing. Not after what she'd survived to rise through the Union fleet ranks. She was 27, youngest flagship commander in 2 centuries, and the adopted daughter of Admiral Rose Varenn, a fact the Senate never let her forget. She was too idealistic, too clean. Too dangerous. "Captain," said Lieutenant Roan quietly beside her, "incoming message from Union Command." Red cipher. She took the datapad, scanning the cold lines of text. "Evacuate anomaly zone. Cease forward operations. Reinforcements rerouted." Her jaw tightened. This was the 4th time in as many weeks that support had been withdrawn just as their scans picked up something unusual. A pattern, deliberate and increasingly sinister. "Patch me through to the fleet," she said. The bridge buzzed with tension as her image broadcast across 23 ships, their crews scattered like flecks of metal around the rift's churning mouth. "This is Commander Varenn," she began. Her voice was steady, her gaze unblinking. "Union Command has ordered a recall. Again. But you all know why we're here. Those readings aren't noise. There's something on the other side of this rift, energy signatures, fragments of structure, patterns too perfect to be natural. I will not abandon this search." She let the silence sit. "Any who wish to leave may do so without reprimand. But I will go forward. Eclipse Dancer will make the jump." They stayed. All of them. The moment the order was given, the rift responded, lights split apart, gravity screamed. And the fleet crossed over. They emerged into cold darkness. No stars. Just the remnants of something vast, a shattered Dyson fragment hanging in silence, and behind it, a fleet, silent, dormant, ancient. But they didn't have time to comprehend it. Alarms flared. Half of their escort ships dropped offline instantly, no sign of damage, just dead systems. Then came the pulses, waves of pure, alien energy striking the fleet like tides. Rose shouted orders. Shields raised. Warp cores contained. And then Eclipse Dancer was alone. Rose blinked, disoriented. One moment, she'd seen her ships flanking her, then nothing. Even the stars had changed. Now, only the rift shimmered behind them, and ahead, a single colossal ship, miles wide, half submerged in a dead nebula. It was like a cathedral built from bone and crystal, asleep for millennia. "Where are we?" Roan whispered. Rose didn't answer. She could feel something, a presence not quite consciousness, but not machine either, pressing at the edge of her mind. And then came the voice. "You are not Valari. You are not chosen. Why have you come?" Rose staggered but didn't fall. She met the invisible gaze. "Because I was abandoned. Because I'm not done." The bridge lights flickered. Biointerfaces across the consoles pulsed in rhythm with her heart. "You seek command. Yet you were left to die." "Exactly," she said, her voice low. "And I won't forget it." The ship responded. The dead engines of the cathedral ship flickered with the light of returning power. Slowly, impossibly, it moved. The rift behind her opened again. A transmission, garbled, frantic, pierced the comms. "Rose, do you read? It's Admiral Kale, what happened? We thought you were lost." She cut the signal. It was too late for apologies. The rift had marked her. The galaxy had thrown her away. Now she would return, with the Armada they feared even in myth. The war had not yet begun, but they had already lost it. The cathedral ship loomed like a forgotten god resurrected from myth, its vast hull stretching into the void with silent menace. Rose stood alone now on the observation deck of the Eclipse Dancer, its surviving systems barely clinging to function. Her crew, what was left of them, remained unconscious in stasis, their minds overwhelmed by the psychic storm they'd passed through. Only she had stayed awake. Only she had been invited. Since the rift crossing, something inside her had changed. She could feel it humming in her blood, like static building behind her eyes. The voice that had first spoken to her, alien, ancient, cold, had not returned, but its presence lingered like the scent of ozone after lightning. The massive ship ahead had not attacked, nor attempted contact again. It simply waited. A shuttle bay had opened 20 hours ago. Just enough to suggest, "Come inside." Rose adjusted the exogloves on her armor and stepped into the shuttle. She didn't bring weapons. She suspected they would mean little where she was going. The cathedral ship's interior was a graveyard of miracles. Everything pulsed with faint bioluminescence, walls that breathed, walkways that shifted slightly beneath her feet, like skin remembering how to flex. She moved carefully, trying to map her path, but the corridors changed around her, as if guiding rather than resisting. Eventually, she came to a chamber. It was circular and enormous, like the hollow of a planet's core. Suspended at its center was a sphere of black crystal, fractured, swirling with ghostly images. Ships. Battles. Faces. A history no longer bound to any living race. The moment she stepped near it, the sphere cracked open. She didn't flinch. A beam of light struck her chest, and her breath vanished. Not from pain, something else. Her mind unraveled, peeled back, and filled. Not with language. With memory. With purpose. The Valari Ascendancy. A civilization beyond time, conquerors of stars, now extinct. Their final weapon, an armada of thinking warships, each bound by a genetic command protocol. Only one who matched their lost lineage could awaken them. She wasn't Valari. But she was close enough. The command key embedded itself beneath her skin, thin, golden filaments stretching from her chest into her spine. She gasped, falling to one knee as her thoughts synced with something vast. The ship responded instantly. Not just awake, eager. In her mind's eye, she saw the others, hundreds of them, drifting in the nebula's depths. Waiting for her signal. "Why me?" she asked aloud, her voice echoing against ancient walls. "Because you understand loss." The answer wasn't a voice. It was a knowing. Because you have no empire to protect. Only a truth to deliver. When she returned to the Eclipse Dancer, her eyes glowed faintly with golden circuitry laced through her veins. Roan was awake, blinking in confusion. "We made it back?" he asked. She crouched beside him. "Not yet." His brow furrowed. "Rose, what happened to you?" She touched the back of his hand gently. "We were left to die. But we weren't alone." They left the rift 3 days later. The cathedral ship, now known to her as the Morning Star, moved silently ahead of them. Behind it, space shimmered, and from the depths emerged others. Hundreds. The lost Armada drifted in formation like a school of titanic leviathans, reborn in the void. Each ship bore marks of age and violence, scars from wars older than memory. But they responded to her presence with grace, subtle shifts in formation, energy cores pulsing in unison. They were hers now. Not because she conquered them. Because she answered. She sat alone in the command chair of the Morning Star, feeling its thoughts ripple through her bones. It did not speak, not in words, but in pulses of intent, emotions transmuted through crystalline resonance. It had known hundreds of commanders. She was the first who asked it why it waited. And the answer was simple. To find someone who wouldn't use them for conquest. But Rose had no intention of ruling. She would return to the galaxy not to claim a throne, but to dismantle the rotten heart that had abandoned her. Not with vengeance, but with revelation. Not with fleets alone, but with undeniable truth. And if fire had to fall before justice could rise, so be it. The stars ahead bent subtly as the Armada entered slipspace, ancient engines humming like a funeral choir. The Union would sense the power returning. They would send diplomats, spies, fleets. Let them come. Rose sat with her back straight, her eyes locked on the swirling edge of known space. They had thrown her into the dark. She had returned with its fire. You said. The Union's outermost patrol fleet detected the breach seconds before their systems failed. One moment, the void was quiet. The next, the stars twisted, and from the distortion emerged impossible shadows, titanic vessels, unlike anything in the known registries, gliding in silence across the edges of space like forgotten gods awakening. The Armada did not announce itself. It didn't need to. Rose stood at the helm of the Morning Star, her reflection ghost-like in the obsidian glass of the command bridge. Around her, alien consoles pulsed to her heartbeat, each motion guiding hundreds of ships that no human could have designed, let alone controlled. She wore no crown, no ceremonial robe, only the jet-black armor threaded with luminous gold circuitry, a second skin gifted by the Armada's living systems. Her presence alone spoke of transformation, survival, and something more profound, authority earned through ruin. Communications across the sector lit up. Threat protocols, scrambled fleet alerts, high-priority diplomatic channels, all ignited in a frenzy. Every admiral, every senator, every architect of her betrayal watched the streams with disbelief as her image appeared, clear, calm, unflinching. "This is Commander Rose Varenn," she said, her voice low but resonant. 3 years ago, I was sent beyond the rift. My fleet was abandoned. My orders forged. I was left to die. Silence followed, thick as smoke. I did not. Her words were a blade, sliding beneath the skin of the Union's lies. I return not to conquer, she continued, but to reveal. I have the records. The transmission logs. The names. Those who condemned me will be known. And those who believe in the truth, stand down. I am not your enemy. But I will not be ignored. The feed cut. Every channel darkened. In its place, the image of the Armada, hundreds of massive, alien warships stretching into formation, burned itself into the collective consciousness of the galaxy. Panic rippled through the Senate halls. Some called her a ghost. Others, a weapon. A few remembered her as she was, principled, relentless, too pure to survive in a galaxy made of compromise. Now she had returned wielding something far more dangerous than vengeance, conviction armed with power. Admiral Narek, the man who had once served beside Rose and quietly signed the retreat order that doomed her, stood in the grand war room with clenched fists. "Mobilize the Helix fleet," he growled. "We do not negotiate with specters." 3 days later, they met at Virilia Station. The Union's task force arrived first, 60 ships, polished, gleaming, a show of force meant to overwhelm. They broadcast formal terms, demanded her surrender, denied every word of her claim. Rose didn't respond. Instead, the Morning Star emerged from the far side of the asteroid belt, its hull catching the dying light of Virilia's red sun. It drifted forward like a reaper at funeral pace. Then the rest of her fleet dropped from slipspace, waves of dark, silent behemoths spreading into a perfect, ancient formation. No ceremony. No threats. Just inevitability. Admiral Narek's voice cracked as he barked last-second orders. "Fire all batteries. Do not wait for her to strike. The first volley from the Union was absorbed before it even touched Hull. The Morning Star's shields, ancient, living things, bent the energy away like wind over stone. In return, a single shot fired. Not from Rose's flagship, but from one of the escorts behind her, a long-dead Valari warship, reawakened and unforgiving. The beam didn't just destroy the Union cruiser, it unmade it, atom by atom, leaving nothing behind but silence and drifting dust. The battle lasted 7 minutes. It wasn't a fight. It was a lesson. When the debris cleared, Rose sent a final message to the Union fleet. No threats. No boasts. Only coordinates, locations of hidden data caches, buried transmissions, sealed Senate records, all encoded proof of the conspiracy that had damned her. The Union ships did not pursue her as she left. They couldn't. Rose stood alone again on the Morning Star's deck, her eyes locked on the core systems ahead. Her face was expressionless, but her mind swirled with memories, of standing before the Senate, pleading for unity. Of watching her friends hesitate when the order came. Of being forgotten in the cold. Now, her silence thundered louder than their cannons. Let the Union decide what to do with the truth. Let them scramble to rewrite history, to claim she was mad, or manipulated, or lost. It didn't matter. She was no longer a whisper in the void. She was the void, returned, and she had only just begun to speak. You said. The sky above Solaria Prime bled amber as the last sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the capital spires of the Galactic Union. The core worlds had grown silent, no celebrations, no broadcasts, only the stillness of anticipation before judgment. In the distance, high above the atmosphere, the silhouette of the Morning Star eclipsed part of the sky like a dark moon. Her arrival was not an invasion. It was a reckoning. Within the high walls of the Union Senate chamber, panic had given way to dread. The emergency council was smaller now, some senators had vanished, others had taken their own lives before their sealed transmissions could be released. Every hour, Rose's fleet transmitted more evidence, encrypted recordings of forged orders, black site transmissions, and hollow footage showing who had known, who had lied, and who had allowed her fleet to die. From her new command bridge, Rose observed the unfolding collapse not with glee, but with a cold, quiet clarity. The faces flashing across the Union newsfeeds were no longer her enemies, they were relics. Symbols of a rotted system she no longer needed to fight. Exposure was its own weapon. Her Armada, now orbiting a dozen systems, remained still, like titans at rest. She had given the Union a choice. And they were beginning to make it. One by one, border colonies declared neutrality. Refugee planets, long neglected by the core, sent messages pledging loyalty to her code. Even military captains, once loyal to the Central Fleet, began requesting audiences. She granted few. Among the first allowed aboard was Admiral Rose Varenn. He stepped into the Morning Star's audience chamber flanked by 2 of his own guards, though even he seemed to know they were ceremonial here. The chamber walls pulsed with a slow, luminous rhythm, responding to Rose's heartbeat. She stood at the far end, robed in deep black, golden veins of light threading through her armor like fire caught in glass. "You're alive," Kale whispered, as though the words might fracture the air. "No thanks to you," she replied, her voice level. He bowed his head, not in guilt, but in recognition. "I wasn't the one who signed the death order. But you didn't stop it." Her tone didn't rise. "It didn't need to. You stood silent while they used me to protect themselves. You gave them the perfect scapegoat." "I tried to protect you," he said quietly. "You don't understand what was at stake." "I understand exactly what was at stake. And I still chose differently." The words cut clean. Kale looked at her, not the daughter he had once taken under his wing, but a force greater than legacy, greater than fear. He understood, then, that she hadn't just survived. She had evolved. What she commanded now wasn't a fleet. It was history's judgment. She dismissed him without fanfare. Not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say. That night, the the Union Senate officially dissolved itself. In its place, a temporary council formed, led not by power-hungry dynasties, but by planetary governors, independent systems, and voices long ignored. They didn't crown her empress. They didn't dare. Instead, they gave her a new name, the Mourning Warden, the one who bore the grief of the lost and held the balance until something better could be built. Rose accepted the title not for glory, but as a shield, one that would not allow the old galaxy to return. In the days that followed, she visited only one place, the graveyard orbit around Helion V, where her original fleet had fallen. Among the drifting wreckage, she stood on the command platform of her old ship's shattered bridge. The Eclipse Dancer had been silent for years, but its memory lingered in every scorched hull plate. Roan joined her there, watching the void stretch endlessly around them. "We did it," he said. "No," she replied, her voice soft. "We survived it. There's a difference." Above them, the fleet held its formation, not as conquerors, but as watchers. Protectors born from pain. They were the past's unfinished sentence, and under Rose's command, they would write the rest. She closed her eyes. Let the silence settle. They had left her to die. She had returned, not just alive. She had returned with the stars. The next video title: They invaded Earth's wasteland. Only one human was waiting.